It's 1:45 a.m. in Tel Aviv. Air raid sirens rip through the city. But this time, it's different. Israel's air defense radars aren't tracking one incoming missile. Not 10, not 50. They're tracking over 300. Drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, all launched from Iranian territory. For the first time in history, this is not a proxy attack. No Hezbollah, no Houthis. This is Iran itself, launching a full-scale assault on a sovereign nation. And the world holds its breath. What happens in the next 4 hours will either trigger World War III or go down in history as the most sophisticated military defense ever executed. This is the story of April 13th, 2024, and the one decision made by the most unlikely country that changed everything. To understand why April 13th happened, we need to go back exactly 2 weeks. April 1st, 2024, Damascus, Syria. It's a sunny afternoon. The Iranian consulate, a building protected under international law, sits in the heart of the city. At 5 p.m. local time, a series of precision airstrikes level the building. 7 Iranian military officers are killed, among them 2 senior generals from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iran immediately points the finger at Israel. Israel, as it almost always does, says nothing. No confirmation, no denial. But within hours, Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei issues a rare public statement. The evil regime will be punished. Israel will be punished. Now, here's what most people don't understand about this moment. Iran has been fighting Israel for decades, but always through proxies. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria. The strategy was simple. Bleed Israel slowly, from multiple directions, while keeping your own hands officially clean. Direct confrontation with Israel, and by extension the United States, was always off the table. Until now, the strike on the consulate crossed a line Iran had never publicly set, but had always privately held. It wasn't just about the generals, it was about prestige, credibility. Iran had spent decades building its axis of resistance, the network of proxy forces across the Middle East. If Iran did nothing after having its own diplomats and generals killed on foreign soil, what does that say to Hezbollah, to Hamas, to every proxy that depends on Iran for weapons, money, and protection? It says, Tehran will sacrifice you. Tehran will not fight back. That is a message Iran could not afford to send. So the decision was made. For the first time in history, Iran would strike Israel directly. But, and this is crucial, they would do it in a very specific way. Iran didn't want a war. Let me say that again, because it sounds strange given what happened. Iran did not want a war. What Iran wanted was something far more calculated. A demonstration. A carefully designed military operation that would, on paper, look devastating. But in practice, give Israel and the United States maximum warning and maximum time to prepare. Here's how we know this. Starting on April 2nd, 12 days before the attack, U.S. intelligence agencies began picking up signals, troop movements, drone deployments, communications between Iranian military commanders. The CIA and NSA briefed the White House. President Biden was told, Iran is preparing a direct strike on Israel. Then something remarkable happened. Iran started leaking. Not accidentally, deliberately. Iranian officials, some speaking on background to journalists, some speaking openly, began hinting that a response was coming, that it would be proportional, that it would happen soon. Regional intermediaries, Qatar, Turkey, Jordan, were quietly informed. The message, delivered through diplomatic back channels, was essentially, we are going to do something. We have to. But we are telling you it's coming. Why would a country announce its own attack? Because Iran was playing a game with multiple audiences simultaneously. The Iranian people, who needed to see their country respond to humiliation. The Arab world, who needed to see Iran as a credible protector. Israel and the United States, whom Iran did not actually want to go to war with. And Hezbollah and Hamas, who needed to believe Iran was all in. The attack had to be real enough to look serious, but telegraphed enough to avoid the kind of casualties that would force Israel and America to respond militarily. It was theater. Deadly, sophisticated, military theater. Now let's talk about the weapons Iran chose, because this matters. Iran launched 3 types of munitions. Shahd 136 drones, Iran's signature weapon. Cheap, slow, one-way. They fly at roughly 200 kilometers per hour. That's slower than most commercial aircraft. Range, up to 2,500 kilometers. Cruise missiles, faster than drones. Terrain hugging, harder to detect on radar. And ballistic missiles, the real threat. These are launched into the upper atmosphere and come screaming down at hypersonic speeds. Iran has been developing these for decades. Iran launched all three simultaneously from 3 different locations on Iranian soil. Drones first, slow, thousands of kilometers away, to trigger the alarm and force defenders to reveal their positions. Cruise missiles second, to exploit any gaps created. Ballistic missiles last, the actual precision weapons, aimed at specific Israeli military targets. On paper, it was a sophisticated attack. What happened next, no one fully predicted. Let's set the scene. It's the evening of April 13th, Saturday night in the Middle East. In Washington, President Biden is at his Delaware home. His national security team is assembled. They've known for days this was coming. In Tel Aviv, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convenes the war cabinet. In Amman, Jordan, and this is the part almost nobody talks about, King Abdullah II makes a phone call. We'll come back to Jordan, because their role in what happened next may have been the single most important factor in the entire night. Let's start with the numbers. Iran launched approximately 170 Shahed drones, 30 cruise missiles, and 120 ballistic missiles. Total, roughly 320 projectiles aimed at Israeli territory. The flight time for the drones from Iranian territory to Israel? Approximately 9 hours. 9 hours. That is both Iran's greatest tactical weakness and Israel's greatest gift. Because 9 hours is a very long time to prepare. The moment Iranian drones crossed into Iraqi airspace, coalition radar systems lit up. U.S. warships in the Red Sea, destroyers equipped with the Aegis combat system, began tracking the incoming swarm. American F-15S and F-16S were scrambled from bases in the region. British Royal Air Force Typhoons, already stationed in Cyprus, were put on alert. And then Jordan made its decision. Jordan is a small country, mostly desert, sandwiched between Israel to the west, Iraq to the east, Syria to the north, Saudi Arabia to the south. Jordan has a peace treaty with Israel, one of only 2 Arab states alongside Egypt to formally recognize the Jewish state. It's a deeply unpopular treaty domestically. Jordan's population is more than 70% Palestinian origin. Anti-Israel sentiment runs high. For King Abdullah to openly help defend Israel, to allow coalition aircraft to shoot down Iranian missiles from Jordanian airspace, is not a small thing. It is, politically, an extraordinarily dangerous thing. And he did it anyway. Why? Several reasons. First, Jordan has its own security concerns about Iranian regional ambitions. Tehran-backed militias operate near Jordan's borders. A destabilized Middle East is bad for Jordan. Second, many of the 320 projectiles were going to pass directly over Jordanian territory. Debris from intercepted missiles was going to fall on Jordanian soil. Jordan wasn't just helping Israel, it was defending itself. Third, the U.S. had specifically requested Jordanian cooperation, and Jordan receives roughly $1.5 billion per year in U.S. aid. Whatever the reasons, Jordan said yes. Jordanian F-16S took to the sky alongside American and British aircraft. Now here's where the technology becomes extraordinary. The United States destroyer USS Carney, already in the Red Sea, began shooting down Shahed drones with its 5-inch gun and standard missile interceptors. U.S. Air Force F-15S, flying out of a classified base in the region, joined Jordanian F-16S in shooting down drones over the desert. British Typhoons downed several more. By the time anything reached Israeli airspace, the swarm had been dramatically thinned. But the ballistic missiles were still coming. And for those, you need Israel's most advanced weapons, Arrow 3. Israel's exo-atmospheric interceptor, designed to destroy ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere, in space, before they re-enter. It was used in combat for the first time ever on this night. Arrow 2, the lower altitude version, designed to intercept ballistic missiles in the final descent phase. David's Sling, medium-range system, designed for cruise missiles and medium-range ballistic missiles. Together, these systems created a layered net. Outer layer, American and Allied aircraft over Jordan and Iraq shooting down drones. Middle layer, Arrow 3, destroying ballistic missiles in space. Inner layer, Arrow 2 and David's Sling catching anything that got through. The result? Out of 320 projectiles, approximately 99% were intercepted or failed. Only a handful of ballistic missiles reached Israeli territory. One caused minor damage to a military base in the Negev desert. One 9-year-old Bedouin girl named Amina al-Hassanat was critically injured by shrapnel from falling missile debris in southern Israel. She was the most serious Israeli casualty of the night. That is, by any military measure, an astonishing outcome. By 5 a.m. on April 14th, the attack was over. Iran held a press conference claiming victory. The operation was called True Promise. Iranian state media showed maps with lines drawn from Iran to Israel, celebration footage from Tehran. From Iran's perspective, the messaging was, "We did it. We struck Israel directly. We kept our promise." From Israel's perspective, and America's, the messaging was very different. President Biden called Netanyahu immediately. The core message from Washington was direct. This was a win. Don't blow it. Because here was the situation Israel faced. They had just survived the largest drone and missile attack in history. Almost no Israeli casualties. The attacker had failed spectacularly. Every rational strategic calculation said, "You won. Take the win. Don't escalate." But Netanyahu's war cabinet was not thinking rationally. They were thinking politically. The Israeli right wing was demanding retaliation. The domestic politics of "we cannot let this stand" were overwhelming. There was a real fear inside the Biden administration, and inside Israel's own security establishment, that Netanyahu would order a major strike on Iran, strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, strikes on Iranian military bases, possibly strikes on oil infrastructure. Any of those scenarios risked a second Iranian response, which risked a broader regional war. Over the next 48 hours, the most intense diplomatic pressure of the entire Gaza conflict was applied to Israel. Biden spoke to Netanyahu multiple times. British Prime Minister Sunak, French President Macron, German Chancellor Scholz. The G7 nations issued a joint statement condemning Iran, but pointedly calling for de-escalation. The message to Netanyahu was clear. We will support you diplomatically. We will not support you militarily if you escalate. On April 19th, 5 days after Iran's attack, Israel did respond, but in a very limited, very deliberate way. Israeli aircraft fired several missiles at a radar installation near Isfahan, in central Iran. The strike was so small that Iran initially denied it happened, then acknowledged it, then downplayed it. Israeli officials leaked to foreign media that the strike was intentionally limited, a demonstration that Israel could reach deep inside Iran if it wanted to. Iran's official response: "We don't see anything significant. We're not escalating." Both sides stepped back from the edge. So what do we take from all of this? First, the rules of the Middle East changed permanently on April 13th. For decades, the understanding was that Iran would fight Israel through proxies. That direct state-on-state confrontation was too dangerous for both sides. That line was crossed. It can be crossed again. Second, the axis of resistance took a significant hit. Iran fired 320 weapons at Israel. 99% were shot down. That's not a military victory. That's a military demonstration of Iranian impotence. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, they all saw this. Their patron, the country that arms and finances them, attempted a massive strike on their enemy. And Israel's children slept through most of it. Third, the coalition that defended Israel that night was unprecedented. The United States, Great Britain, France, Jordan, an Arab country, shooting down Iranian missiles to protect Israel. That image, Jordanian F-16s in the sky alongside American aircraft, would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. Fourth, Iran's strategy may have worked on its own terms. This is the uncomfortable truth. Iran didn't want to start a war. It wanted to demonstrate that it could strike Israel directly. It did that. The image of Iranian missiles in the sky above Israeli cities, regardless of how many were shot down, sent a message to every Iranian citizen, every Iranian proxy, every enemy of Iran. We can reach you. And finally, the 9-year-old girl, Amina al-Hassanat, the Bedouin girl from southern Israel. She survived. She recovered. But in the middle of all this analysis of missiles and interceptors and geopolitics and deterrence theory, there was a child, injured. Because adults with power decided to play these games over her sky. That's worth remembering. April 13th, 2024 was a night that could have gone very differently. If Jordan had said no, if Arrow 3 had malfunctioned, if Netanyahu had ordered a massive retaliation, we might be living in a different world right now. Instead, through a combination of military technology, allied cooperation, and deliberate diplomatic restraint, the night ended without a regional war. For now, the questions raised by this attack haven't been answered. They've been deferred. Can Iran and Israel continue to exist in this state of semi-open conflict indefinitely? Will the next escalation be the one that tips into something uncontrollable? And what does it mean for the world that the most advanced missile defense system ever assembled, with the full support of the United States, Britain, and multiple Arab nations, was barely enough? I don't have those answers. What I do know is this. The Middle East is not the same place it was before April 13th. And the next time sirens sound over Tel Aviv, everyone will remember this night. If this video helped you understand what actually happened and why it matters, subscribe. Every week I cover the military history and geopolitical events that shape the world we live in. The real stories, the full picture. See you in the next one.